even if it felt, far reaching, and I would just try to flip it, flip it, flip it. And then the following day I started really trying to believe it, right? Put some gratitude in my heart, open myself up and truly be grateful and start to instead fall in love with myself instead of, the opposite. And by day 5, my skin was completely clear.
Living with autoimmunity doesn't mean settling for less. Inspired Living with Autoimmunity is the show for high achievers who want the energy and vitality to live fully, not just manage symptoms. With your host and autoimmune coach, Julie Houghton. It's time to take your power back.
Anik, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited for you to share your skin wisdom, which we know is health wisdom with listeners. I know psoriasis affects so many people now. And so I would love first for listeners to get to know you a little bit and share a bit of your journey as to how you got into this world.
Thank you so much. Yes. And you're right. There are currently 125 million people with psoriasis, and the
It's
number grows
amazing.
almost exponentially every year. And so that's something that really needs to be addressed. Otherwise, it just will continue to, perpetuate itself. But as far as how I became interested, it was, it's always despite yourself that you end up in this world having these conversations and eventually contributing to the conversation. And for me, I was a really sort of like rough and tumble kid. You know, like most of us, I grew up on Wonder Bread and Nutella and antibiotics and, all the things. And when I was about 12 years old, I started noticing some psoriasis on my arms, but behind my ears, around my eyebrows, places where it was pretty obvious, but it was very mild, comparatively speaking, now that I have perspective. And we didn't know, my family didn't know what was going on, what it was, which is why, again, these conversations are so important, especially for kids and with kids. And so I went to my family doctor. I was given a topical steroid. And for the next 7 to 8 years, I, just used the steroid. And as we all know, I had to, I eventually started using more and more and more of it to be able to mitigate the symptoms. And for me, like most of us, I think, with any type of autoimmunity, with a skin issue, it's you're wearing it for the entire world to see.
Sure.
And you're seeing it on yourself
Yeah.
every day. And so it becomes front of mind very quickly. And so when your exacerbations are happening in real time and you can see them in the mirror. And so for me, what happened was it was very, very mild. And usually there's a particular type of insult, right? Some injuries happen over time and some injuries happen very suddenly. And for me, what really sort of exploded the situation was when I went through undergraduate studies and when I started graduate school. I grew up in Canada. I was moving to the United States for grad school in New York, and in order to obtain my student visa, I needed to show proof of vaccination, which to
Uh,
come to the US. Well, back when I was fully vaccinated as a child, it was all on paper. You had a card.
sure.
You know, none of it, and I'm sure my doctor had obviously some records, but it never even occurred to us to ask for that. But to make a long story short, my vaccine records had been destroyed in a house fire.
Oh, gosh.
And so I had no records and not really knowing any better and not knowing how to advocate or really not
Sure.
knowing anything at the time.
Options. Yeah.
Exactly. I was vaccinated for everything mandated at the time in one sitting.
Gosh.
And, obviously, being that I had psoriasis already, my gut was already affected. I may have had a hard time detoxifying and processing, chemicals in the first place. my skin became probably about 35% worse on the spot within 2 weeks. And then I went through graduate school and, all the stressors and, I'm a chiropractor, and so I was in a human anatomy lab for about 20 hours a week for a year and a half, and so being exposed to all the formaldehyde and the chemical toxins, my skin just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I just, at this point, was practically bathing in the steroids and, taking things like methotrexate, which is a chemotherapy drug that they try, right?
Lots
Which
of autoimmune people are familiar with methotrexate, not a
methotrexate,
pleasant drug.
not pleasant, and for
No.
me, it just exacerbated my problem.
Sure.
Every time I would take it, I would get worse, right? Because it was just another
Ugh,
chemical irritant. So then, my husband is American, and when he proposed and I decided I needed to get my green card because we were about to graduate and I wanted to work, obviously, and, in the green card interview, they do they separate you and they interview you, and then they do a medical examination, and I guess we were still so young and naive and blindsided, I was vaccinated for everything all over again.
oh my gosh. How do you
Yes,
even still have skin?
I know,
Like, holy
I know.
cow.
And it took me a while for it to occur. I wouldn't have let that happen if I'd realized really what had happened in the first place, but
Right.
it happened and now I was literally covered. And I was about 24 going on 25. And that just put me on a situation where for 10 years I had no choice despite myself but to just figure it out. Because no matter what I did, I was just maybe addressing the symptoms a little bit, but everything I would do would just eventually exacerbate. And so I had to figure out the nutrition piece and the supplementation piece. And what ended up happening is I became so um, obsessed with what I was doing because I wasn't getting better, partly because we all know that healing takes time, but also, I think I was placing myself in this little box of restrictions, right?
Yes.
I didn't know what I was doing at the time in the beginning, so I became vegan, and then I became raw vegan, and I just didn't know I was trying everything. And, I was living in this space where I would punish myself with this self-deprecating language when I would veer off course, like
Right.
many of us do, right? What am I gonna look like? What am I gonna feel like
Affection.
tomorrow
Yeah.
morning? Mhm. Tomorrow morning, if while I'm at this pool party and there's no other food and somebody offers me a hot dog or whatever,
Something. Yeah.
something, and at the risk of being rude or starving, I'm gonna have it, and then it's like, "Okay, tomorrow, is it gonna be
I'm
worse?
gonna
Is it worse
pay.
now? It's worse." So then I would make the box smaller and smaller and smaller until I think it really turned into the behavior became stressful in and of
It's
itself.
yeah, it becomes almost disordered. I think we've all been there. Anybody who's been really serious about a healing journey. Oftentimes, it's a little later in the journey when you are, like, figured out enough things to start feeling better, and then, but as you know, and I know, that's not actually healing, that health is resilient, and so, um
Exactly.
yeah, and I heard you were doing the nutrition and the supplements, and I know what's missing because
Yeah,
I cheated, um, it's so hard to really hear when you're in the beginnings of your healing journey or you haven't even started yet, but when you hold healing really tightly, it's not gonna happen, right? Like, most people at one point or another can execute really well. That's not usually the problem, but
exactly.
it sounds crazy to say, "You have to hold it gently and allow the healing to happen."
Well,
But you figured it out, you got there.
I did get there, and I remember, going through all of this and somebody at one point saying to me, "Have you tried meditating?" And I
And
remember
you were like,
I
"Are you a lunatic?"
exactly, I was like, "Are you crazy? Do you know what I've tried? I've tried everything, you know? I have literally tried everything, it's not gonna be." I remember actually feeling angry about it and going
Yeah,
home and seething about it that night, like, that's so, and
so
I've
off
often thought
base.
about giving her like, finding her and giving her a call and, apologizing
Right.
for the thoughts I had that night. But what ended up happening was years later, as I was going through, and you're right, I was getting better, and I knew, that the nightshades exacerbated it, and I knew that the legumes exacerbated it, I knew what not to do, and I was so obsessed with what not to do
Mhm.
that I forgot, you know, how
What you
to
should
enjoy life.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
And
it really does become almost obsessive,
yes,
right? Because for those of us that have lived in discomfort, whatever that looks like,
exactly.
if chronically,
Yes.
and so, you know, so and then so you're all of a sudden you started to figure it out.
So, well, what happened is I was, somebody because I'm a chiropractor, we have these conversations about,
Sure.
these, and this is a part of the conversation in chiropractic. I mean, a third of what we know creates illness is, thought patterns and the way we think, the language we use with ourselves. But I just somehow that didn't apply to me at the time, and um, I somebody sent me, or somewhere along the way, I got a hold of the book The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, Byrne. And it was the first time, and honestly, the book is brilliant. It's not very well written in terms of, you're not gonna read it and be like, "Wow, this is a piece of literature," but it
Right.
doesn't matter. I read it one night in bed it's a very fast read. I read it in a couple of hours, and I couldn't believe the language being used around what happens when with visualization and gratitude and manifesting and all of these conversations, and I just had this sort of shift, like the world underneath my feet shifted for a moment where I just knew that this was something to explore. It was the time to explore it, and that it most likely was it. I felt it innately, and so a few days later, I was, going back east for a family wedding, and my kids and my husband were my kids came with me. My husband was staying home. My parents lived on this beautiful farm, on a 100-acre farm on the Ottawa River, and I just had this thought that, what if I started observing my thought patterns? And I
Mm.
shared this with my parents, and they loved, obviously my kids, but they agreed to just kind of let me be by myself for hours every day to kind of work on this thought project, and I had
Yeah.
5 days to do it, and so every day, I would go for a long, long walk on this old country road for about 15 miles a day. I mean, I was gone for hours, and no phone, no, just my running shoes and
It's
a bottle
you.
of water. And I started paying attention to my thoughts.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that every at least a few times per minute, if not every handful of seconds, I was having some sort of self-deprecating thought around my
Yep.
skin.
Yeah.
And I had never had these conversations before. I didn't even know that a person could do that. I didn't know. I thought it I didn't know. I couldn't believe what I was hearing in my own head.
Right.
And I started.
I wanna pause you there
Yes.
just for listeners to highlight the we all do,
Yes.
and
Yes.
we don't typically hear it unless we're paying attention. And just like with diet or nutrition or movement or any other lifestyle, you know, pillar, it's the awareness is always the first step of to change, right? To create change. So
Absolutely.
I love that you shared that, for you, it was really eye-opening to realize how much of that has been I call it like it's equivalent of having an open program running on your computer in the background, right? Like, you don't just because you're not noticing and paying attention and actually realizing doesn't mean it's not working against you. Um,
Exactly.
yeah,
And that's part of it, right? It's this whole, like, be careful what you say because 'cause you're
yeah,
listening, right? And
right.
you're saying you're and
Language.
yes, and you're using language when you think, and so that and
Yep.
of course, there's so much science. I mean, I really explored the science behind that because I just am fascinated by it, and so
Yeah.
I started doing so on day 1, I started just sort of noticing, for hours work, walking on this road, shocked. I mean, I still get goosebumps when I think about it, absolutely shocked with the language I was using with myself, and so then the next day, I started this sort of project where I would catch the thought, and as much as possible, I would reverse it to the exact opposite, right? And so if the thought is something like, I'm ugly, let's say, then the thought became, I'm so beautiful. Even if it felt, far reaching and I would just try to flip it, flip it, flip it. And I mean, this was like thousands of times on this one walk. And then the following day, I started really trying to believe it, right? Put some gratitude in my heart, open myself up, and truly be grateful and start to instead fall in love with myself instead of, the opposite. And by day 5, and this is and my husband, my parents, we were all witness to it because my husband came, flew in about 5 days later. By day 5, my skin was completely clear.
Wow.
It was an absolute I wanna call it a miracle, but we only call things miracles because we don't believe they can happen, I
We don't
guess,
yeah, we
right?
don't understand the
Exactly, and
mechanisms,
if
right?
I hadn't lived it, I mean, if somebody and this is why it's so important to me to have these conversations because I
Yeah.
know how crazy it sounds, but at the
Well,
same
and
time,
here's
like
the thing, you are special and beautiful and all the things, but we are all created to heal. Like, we all
yes,
have that power. Everybody's
absolutely.
journey may look different.
Yep,
You had this remarkable, um, you know, A, like, you had this dedicated time, and I'm already also filling in the, like, and you were in nature, and you were there were all these levels,
yes,
but the intention and the dedication you put into that process to give it a try is
absolutely.
is amazing,
Well,
and I wanna just highlight that open program, that language, the conversations going on that we're not paying attention to. We may not be conscious of them, but our cells are responding to them all day long. So,
absolutely.
I love that. I don't think I've ever met anybody that had such a intense, pretty immediate, but also, to be fair, you really dedicated yourself to this process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and the groundwork, everything else, the
You were already on
physicality of it
point.
was already it was I
Yeah.
was, 12 years in the making of the
Yeah.
lifestyle, the diet,
Was
the
the missing
supplements, the
piece.
sleep, it was literally the missing piece, and it was just for me, it was instant, and then I was so I it's almost like I reinvented, I was imagining in my mind that I had been born healthy and with beautiful skin, which I was, we all and that this had actually I just sort of reinvented my entire past also. Like, this had never been an issue for me. I'd always been I would, take a look. I would try to find one little piece of my skin that was healthy, and I would visualize it spreading, right?
Everywhere.
Visualize myself
Yeah.
standing in front of a mirror, spreading all over my body with gratitude and then telling myself that it had always been that way. And so it just became sort of a one and done. And then I spent many years not talking about it at all because I didn't want to me, I was so, it was so important to me to reinvent myself that I didn't wanna revisit that whole conversation because I had literally
You wanted to
reinvented
ride the wave.
exactly, and I thought to myself, "No, I can't this can't even be a part of my reality." because it's, and then I realized, no, this is actually a part of who I am. And this is a conversation that's very important. And I just
Yes.
decided a few years ago, I have to share this because now I have trust, right? That if I
Yeah.
continue to live the lifestyle and that my body will take care of me. And you're right. The body's default is toward health. That's how we're innately made. And so um, I think if the proper pieces are in place, and they're always gonna have to be tended to,
Right. There
right?
is no you're never done. I love
No,
that
it's a
that you bring that
lifestyle.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so from this trust and faith that actually I would almost say it is like your responsibility, especially as you're already a provider, to share, right? This is
Yes.
why we're here. This is why we have
Exactly.
these conversations.
Exactly.
And so for me, my first step in sharing was to create the podcast several years ago. And I don't know if I've ever said it on air before, but I either going to write a book in that moment, start a book or start the podcast. And I kind of started the podcast as a way to avoid writing the book, which is still coming. It'll be a different book, but it will come. But so from this, you birthed the baby of a book that can help people that you may never directly even meet. Tell us a
Exactly.
little bit about the book.
Yes, thank you. It's called Skin on Fire: Healing Psoriasis Naturally. And it encompasses sort of the history, the cause, the very specific causes. And so a lot of people don't realize that with autoimmunity in general, but with psoriasis specifically, there's a lot of information in the literature that points to very specific things exacerbating and triggering and being the cause of, chemically, physically, emotionally, all of these things. And so we take a deep dive to make sure that if somebody's really struggling and they're doing everything they can, that they're not actively taking in something exacerbating their problem that's very specific.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to, of course, focus on nutrition. There's no choice. Involves AIP diet, very specific supplementation, all of the things. And uh, household,
Yeah.
identifying certain things in your household that may be perpetuating the problem as well, and the mindset, which is huge. And so that I knew all of these things about mindset, but it forced me to really take a look at the science. And
Yeah.
once I found out that there's been science around since the 1940s
Yep.
on the placebo effect and mindset, and I was blown away, and then I really felt empowered, like, "Oh, okay, there's actually I feel confident, instead of just sharing my anecdotal story, there's a lot of science to back it up."
Absolutely. And I have said before on the podcast, if you start working on not a lot of people are going to need more than 5 intense days for the mindset
Yes.
piece.
Yes.
And so it's never too soon to start working on that. But
Yes.
wherever you are in your healing journey, that has to be, and I think that that's the we are complex beings, and so there is never one thing, right? It's not just what you eat or just what comes in contact with your skin or just your mindset, or it's all of it, and that is what I think makes it overwhelming for people, or why often people, it's not a matter of they're not trying or they haven't read the book or they haven't, but I do believe, because I see it time and time again, if you start with mindset, if you are at the beginning of your journey, all the rest of those things are going to work exponentially better, quicker.
Absolutely.
And so I love that, you have my mind going of like, oh, maybe we can create these like intensives where like a jump
I
start.
know. Exactly, to
Yeah.
create, and it's only, honestly, it's a lot of work. It was exhausting, but it was so empowering and
Yeah.
very pleasant. I mean, interesting and mind-boggling, but very like innate. I just innately and intuitively, it just felt so timely.
Yeah.
And it really, I just knew it was the missing link as soon as I started. And then, you take a look at the science. I mean, there's science to show that the moment you stop thinking a certain thought that you've had forever, the moment you do that, those synaptic connections in real time, I mean, we can see it
Yeah.
on, high intensity microscopes. The neuronal synaptic connections will start to break. And the moment that you create a new thought, you form new synaptic connections, and so you're literally reinventing yourself on the spot,
Yeah.
which is amazing. And when it comes to something like skin, I mean, our skin turns over every 21 days. And so if you think about how quickly you can start to reshape yourself, it's just really inspiring. And you're right, touching back on, it's not one thing. It is
Sure.
overwhelming, but you can
Can
start
be.
with one thing,
Right.
right? You can
You can't
start with one thing.
Yeah, I'm doing all of it. I joke, I, like, have apologized to all of my early clients, um,
Yes.
because, we do know food is important, and is often a trigger, and we know the gut needs by the time you have autoimmunity, by the time whether it's lifelong psoriasis or it's a new symptom,
Yes.
we know that we need to heal the gut. And though I used to just I used to be like, "You have to do this, this, this," and I'm sure in my early clients, I was driving stress up, and then we were addressing stress management, I'm like, "Oh, sorry." They got results, but it didn't have to be quite so unpleasant. So,
Exactly. I think there's a
yeah,
lot to be said for giving yourself some grace.
it's my
And,
favorite word. Yeah,
yes, and also realizing that healing is just about time and consistency. But
yeah.
that consistency, I mean,
Not
and that's the thing.
perfection.
Exactly, exactly. And well, that was the challenge actually in writing the book because I thought to myself, I know so much. I'm gonna write it all down. And I did. And then at the end, I'm like, but if you just pick and choose right now, pick and choose the things that you're
Yeah.
inspired by, you'll
Yeah,
see some change. And
absolutely.
then 6 months from now, when you've got a good handle on those things, then you're naturally gonna be more curious, and you might pick up on something else. And because when you read because I couldn't help but write it all down
Sure.
because it all pertains, but then you get to the end and you're like, that feels like a lot. Now just pick and choose what you wanna start with, you know?
I love that because it has to be something someone can be successful with, right? So it may look, as much as I do firmly believe you gotta start with mindset, it doesn't mean you have to handle it's like you said, whatever's resonating with you in that moment, that
Exactly.
you need to build those successes
Yes,
to create that momentum and the energy to make the next change, and doing it
exactly.
all at once is not realistic.
No,
Yeah.
it's not because then you're gonna be placing yourself in that box.
Yeah.
And, that's yeah. I and, when I take a look at this too, I feel like people will naturally be drawn to start with what they're meant to start with,
Right.
you
I
know?
love that.
If you're
Yeah.
excited about, if you don't want to eliminate your legumes, but you're excited about sprouting them,
Right.
or there are just so many different options and places to start, and so
I love that. My staff at the clinic teases me that they're gonna get a sign made that says "better is better,"
yes,
because when I was still in the box, and my husband, who wasn't my husband at the time, I would hear him tell patients, "Well, just better, better," and I'm like, "No, you don't understand.
yes,
Has
yes,
to be perfect or it's not gonna work,"
exactly.
And now
And
I'm
then
like,
you're gonna
"Ah,
make
he's
everybody around you crazy.
yeah, better is better," and
It
so
is.
I love that. It's like, no, if you have to have it, here's a better way.
Well, and also considering, the hundreds of millions of people now
Yeah.
who are afflicted by autoimmunity, having the
Oh,
conversations not just about, how to heal it once you have it, but, like, with my kids, I
sure.
knew I had an autoimmune issue,
Yeah.
But I also knew that it wasn't necessarily genetics causing it,
Right.
which I explore as well, how your genes are not your destiny. And you don't, a lot of people feel like, well, my mom had this and now I have this. So
It's like, well, did you eat the same way and get
exactly.
exposed to the same things and
Exactly. What's
hear
your
those
environment like?
patterns? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And so being able to also take some, responsibility, and I don't mean responsibility in terms of like, oh,
Empowerment.
exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
a responsibility for where we are right now, and the fact that healing is available, but that it does have to become a lifestyle. That's just not something that we can step away from, and so these conversations, as you know, and that's kind of the whole, my understanding from your podcast is the podcast is really meant for people who are inspired to
Yes.
be, a bit more self-directed and, um,
Yeah. And
to
find people like you, like me, like, the hundreds of other healthcare providers and professionals that, eh, you know, you can take even with psoriasis, but you can take somebody's healing journey, and it's just not gonna resonate with everybody,
Mhm.
right? And
Yep.
so that's why I love having these conversations because your story may spark somebody who has already been told all those same things, but it just didn't say or like you said, as a because I tend to because healing is a process, and I'm
Mhm.
always working on my health, and I'm human too, and we get hit with
Yes.
stressors and things, and sometimes we need to reassess and up level in a certain area, and I do find as I work with clients, if there's something that I need to see or do, it tends to come up in my work, until I'm like, "Oh, that's the 3rd time that's come up this week. I better
Right.
check in and see." Um,
Yes.
and so, even though you knew to tell people that mindset was a definitely a part of health, it doesn't mean we realize, like, "Oh, we're missing that right now."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we're not even aware. I
Yeah.
wasn't aware. At all. And
Yeah.
so I was like, "What do you mean go meditate? Just go sit there and be quiet," which of course all of it is great advice, but it's like, how's that
But
gonna make a
also,
difference?
what are you ready for? And sometimes I tease, like, even just the word meditate makes some of my
Yes,
tightly wound clients, like, immediately go into a stress response. So, like you said, it's what
absolutely. Because
resonates.
because we all
Yeah,
exactly, and we all imagine that meditation looks like sitting on a rock in your backyard,
right.
quiet, still for 2 hours, and
If
there are
that's your jam,
different types.
yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. And that works also, I have a
sure.
sauna and that's where I can find myself sitting for 20 minutes, which is great. But walking meditation is fine too.
Yeah,
There are so many different morning affirmations, just a few
yeah.
minutes
Well,
every morning of getting
gratitude.
up and
Yeah,
yes. Yep,
yeah. You
finding
mentioned
something.
gratitude and um, you know, neural connections and, writing a few gratitudes every day. Man,
And
will that help
even
you rewire?
realizing yes, and even realizing that there was a study done, out of Harvard years ago in the 1940s, in 1946, I believe it was. The PhD doctor doing the study wanted to explore the effects of placebo, and they did a study on people with IBS, and what they did was this doctor gave people they had them separated into 2 control groups. This actually started the entire double-blind placebo-controlled trial, measure by which we study things now, but the doctor they had a no treatment group, and they had a group that were given for their IBS a little bottle that said placebo pills. And he basically told the group of participants that were in the placebo group that they were taking a sham treatment. And so they were completely aware, and then there was a no treatment group, and 3 weeks later, the group that was taking the sham treatment reported feeling twice better, twice as better as the group that had no treatment. And so even knowing, and that's my point. And so even if it feels like you're lying to yourself in the
Right,
beginning,
and it will, for sure.
and it will, it's still on the
It's
spot
still working.
starts to rewire the brain. It doesn't matter that you don't believe what you're saying. Eventually you will believe it.
And I take it a
And
step further. I think that when you get to the things that you really have that reaction, like you really don't believe, that's now you're getting to the really good stuff. That's the stuff you really
exactly.
need. So, I love
Absolutely.
that you brought
If
that up. Yeah.
yes, and so saying certain things even and then there's this you take it a step further and when you say certain things out loud as
Mhm.
opposed to just thinking them, and so
Yeah,
creating a list of wishes, basically, and it
right, and
sounds
make them be
so
true.
and say them out loud and say them out loud every day, trying to bring some gratitude from a heart, a heart glowing place, it's free, it's easy, it doesn't require much effort, and it really, I think, can tip the scales, especially when most of the other pieces are in place or not. It's also a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna pull the curtain back now if you're willing.
Yes.
Do you
Yes.
ever get a flare or experience
I will tell you that when I get very stressed, and I mean, we all have our moments of extreme stress. I will notice small, tiny, I'll see it
starting?
coming. Nobody else could ever notice it, but we know our bodies so well. And that's when I know I have to just hyper focus.
Yeah,
Hyper
again,
focus.
time to up level.
Exactly,
Yeah,
zero in on my diet a bit more, take, for me, high levels of omega-3 fatty acids, some antioxidants, there's very specific a GI repair supplement that I absolutely swear by that's a mixture of, diglycerated licorice, slippery embark, and marshmallow root. Is seems to work really well, and then again, my affirmations and my sort of my reassurance again that I'm already healed, and typically that takes care of it almost there I can and I have so much trust in the process. I think that's also a big piece of it.
mindset. Yeah,
I will say that I had a flare, and this I think is important because it's also not something that I had ever heard before. I have a very bad Instagram page because I'm like a dinosaur when it comes to social media, and I don't enjoy posting videos, and I should do it more. But I posted a video about this, and I got so I think I had probably hundreds of thousands of reactions where people were like, "Well, duh. Didn't you know this? I knew this. Didn't you know this? I didn't know this." A year and a half ago, I had a small tattoo. It's a small tattoo of
oh,
2
you
birds.
silly girl.
I and it's not as if I'm covered in tattoos, but, I got a little tattoo to commemorate my mom, and I was so excited about it. It's dainty, and within about 3 weeks, I had a little piece of psoriasis right on the tattoo, and I thought, "Oh, that's a physical injury." It's a physical injury from the scratch, the needle, whatever. And then a couple
Mhm.
little spaces on my torso, and I thought, "Oh, what is this?" And only because it started on the tattoo did I take a
Connect
sort
the
of a deep
dots.
dive into tattoo ink
Yeah.
and,
Mhm.
the toxicity of it and
Not
really
so
how
good,
very
no
toxic it
bueno.
is.
Yeah,
And
it is.
so after that, I did do a cellular detox,
Sure.
like a
Yeah,
heavy metal detox, and,
smart.
it cleared it up
Okay,
because I
but
knew how to handle it right away.
yeah, and I love that, and that is so thank you for being so open and vulnerable with us.
Of course.
I feel like it's so important for listeners to understand, we've already said it, but healing's not a straight line. You're never done. We're all human, and when we have the tools and we know what works, when there's an oops, whether it's a tattoo or like you said, for you, like a certain level of stress is a trigger.
Yep.
For
Yep.
me, it's typically it will be if I don't prioritize sleep, if I'm, I can handle one night of not great sleep, but if they start to stack up, I will realize inflammation is coming back. And so, but that it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing
It is.
because we have resilience and we know what to do and we can up level and return to a good baseline. And so I
And I
really
also yes. I also feel like that's exactly you're talking about, again, going back to giving yourself grace
yeah.
and not, not punishing yourself, not it's more about like, "Oh,"
Well,
and then
and
feeling
and
empowered.
yeah, and even with the tattoo, it's the same whether it's a food, whether it's a does it mean you should never ever ever get another tattoo? Well, that's your choice. Now you have more
Exactly.
information to
Exactly.
weigh, um, and so I love that, and it is such a great example of, like,
Well, it was
things we
so
just
funny because literally hundreds of
you got
thousands of
slammed.
people my son, because I'm a dinosaur about it, my 20-year-old son sort of manages my
Yeah,
fairly poorly managed Instagram page, and he was like, "Mom, you're getting a lot of hate over this tattoo thing," and I was just like, "I had no idea," and then I also
but
realized if
just
I had no idea, I'm sure that there are
other
so
people
many
yeah,
which is why I wanted to continue to share that, like, just be aware, you know, that
yeah,
if you do
they're
get a tattoo,
dirty.
you may want to do some
Really
sort of detox.
detox.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely,
immediately after. Same
absolutely.
thing with general anesthesia. That was
Yes.
another
Yeah,
one. If you have to have a
big one.
surgery or big one.
Yeah. So, no, I
So
love that you shared that, and it's true, the ones that are like, "I didn't know that," they're not the ones that were commenting,
no,
but what you did was you started a conversation, and
exactly,
that is
exactly.
how we can get the messages out there. Where can people find the book?
On Amazon or Barnes& and
Yes.
Noble, or, I'm a really big fan of local bookstores, and so it can be ordered through your local bookstore as well.
I love it, and where
Yes.
is for people that listen on the go, where's the best place to find you?
I have a website. I do a lot of writing, but I have a website for the book. It's Anik, A-N-I-K, saintmartin.com. And then the book is /skin on fire. And for your listeners, I did upload a list of my favorite affirmations, the ones that I
Mhm.
use, along with it's sort of a poem, but also a prayer, a Navajo-based prayer that I absolutely have used for years. I included it on there, and it's under the resource section on the website, and it's just, available for download, a PDF, and I think it's wonderful, and
Amazing.
it's years of just what has
Yeah.
worked for me. Mhm.
Ah, thank you so much. So listeners are leaning in because you've already given so much gold, but what is one step that everyone can take today to start to improve their health?
Thank you. I think actually, when you mentioned sleep earlier,
Mhm.
that's one thing I think. With stress comes lack of sleep. I think starting off with as much of a good night's sleep as possible, if that means going to bed earlier and waking up the following morning, visualizing, waking up in the morning, imagining that you're now at the end of your day, imagining your ideal day, and being grateful for that ideal day that you imagine in your mind's eye has already happened, right? So you're still in bed, but you imagine the day's done and you bring some gratitude into your heart and you start to thank everything that happened today and the way you feel and the way you look and the choices you've made and the relationships you've created and everything else with some gratitude around your heart before your feet even hit the ground. I think is a wonderful first step, specifically when we're talking about mindset.
Amazing. So you're manifesting a wonderful day with
Exactly.
with gratitude. I love that you include
Yes,
that.
with gratitude. Yeah.
Ah. Anik, thank you so very much for sharing your wisdom. I am so excited to share your book. I have already like a running list of people I know that are going to be receiving a surprise copy. Um,
Thank you.
and really genuinely appreciate your work.
Thank you so much. You too. Keep doing such a great job. These are extremely important conversations, and I'm really grateful to have been part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. For everyone listening, remember you can get the transcripts and show notes by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to Inspired Living with Autoimmunity, hosted by Julie Houghton, your autoimmune coach. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone in your life who needs to hear it. For the complete show notes, links, transcripts, and everything discussed today, visit inspiredliving.show. You can also send in your questions there to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Remember, it's time to take your power back.